The security checkpoint hummed with an odd frequency that made Rebecca Walsh's teeth ache. She rolled her shoulders, trying to shake off the tension that had been building since their shuttle docked with the alien vessel. 3 months of preparation, countless briefings about protocol, and somehow nobody had mentioned the scanners would sound like a dying refrigerator. David Park walked through first, his diplomatic credentials flashing green on the alien display. The tall insectoid creature operating the scanner barely glanced at him before waving him through. Standard procedure, Rebecca thought. Nothing interesting about a middle-aged diplomat in a boring gray suit. Her turn came next. She stepped into the scanning field, arms slightly away from her body like she'd been instructed. The light that washed over her felt warm, almost pleasant. For a moment she wondered if this whole first contact thing might actually go smoothly. Then every alarm in the corridor started screaming. Rebecca froze. The insectoid operator's compound eyes went wide, all dozen of them. Its chittering voice rose in pitch, calling out in a language the translation device in her ear couldn't quite catch. More aliens appeared from side passages, these ones wearing what looked like heavy armor. They weren't pointing weapons at her, which seemed like a good sign. But they weren't exactly looking friendly either. David turned back, his face pale. He started to move toward her, but one of the armored aliens held up a clawed hand, stopping him. The diplomat's mouth opened and closed like a fish, no sound coming out. A new figure emerged from deeper in the ship. This one was clearly important. It stood nearly 7 feet tall, with an exoskeleton that gleamed dark blue under the corridor lights. Elaborate markings covered its thorax, and it moved with the kind of confidence that came from decades of command. The other alien stepped back immediately, creating a path. The tall alien approached the scanning station, its movements deliberate and measured. It looked at the display screen, then at Rebecca, then back at the screen. When it finally spoke, the translation came through clearly in her earpiece. "Hi, Commander Ralthos," it said, apparently introducing itself. "You are the human warrior." Rebecca blinked. "I'm Captain Rebecca Walsh, part of the diplomatic delegation. I served in our military, yes, but I'm here as an advisor to Ambassador Park." Ralthos tilted its head in a gesture that might have been confusion. It gestured at the screen where Rebecca could see her own image outlined in pulsing red light. Strange symbols scrolled beside the image, none of which she could read. "The scanner does not lie," Ralthos said. Its voice carried an odd reverence that made Rebecca's stomach clench. "It has recorded your combat honors. Extensive combat honors. I have seen such markings only 3 times in my career. Each time on warriors of legendary status." Rebecca looked down at her left arm, where her tattoo sleeve was clearly visible under the short-sleeved uniform shirt. The phoenix wrapped around her forearm in brilliant reds and oranges. Above it, geometric patterns flowed into flowering vines. On her shoulder, barely visible, were the opening lines of a poem her grandmother used to recite. "These?" she said, lifting her arm. "These are just tattoos. They're decorative, personal. They don't mean I fought in battles." The scanning officer, a smaller alien with gray-green skin, chittered something urgent. Ralthos listened, then turned back to Rebecca with what might have been concern. "You say these markings have no meaning. That cannot be. Our databases contain records from 47 known species. All of them use skin markings to denote combat achievements, territory conquered, enemies defeated. The complexity of your markings suggests hundreds of engagements." David found his voice. "Commander Ralthos, I think there's been a misunderstanding. In human culture, we mark our skin for many reasons. Art, memory, personal expression. They're not military decorations." But more aliens were arriving now, crowding the corridor. They all stared at Rebecca with a mixture of awe and what looked like fear. She caught fragments of translated whispers. Legendary, ancient warrior codes, survived impossible odds. The phoenix must mean resurrection from death itself. Ralthos raised a hand and the crowd fell silent. "Ambassador Park, you claim these markings are not combat honors, yet your warrior bears them openly. In the Draxian Collective, such extensive markings are earned only through valor in battle. They cannot be granted, only earned. To wear false honors is the gravest insult to warrior codes across all our species." Rebecca felt her jaw tighten. She'd gotten her first tattoo at 19, a small star on her ankle. The phoenix came years later after her mother died. The geometric patterns she'd added because she liked the artist's work. The flowers represented growth, change, beauty. The poem was her grandmother's voice preserved in ink. None of it had anything to do with war. "I'm not lying," she said carefully, And I'm not trying to insult anyone. Where I come from, these markings are personal. They mean something to me, but not battles. Ralthos studied her for a long moment. The corridor had gone completely silent except for the low hum of the ship's systems. Finally, the commander spoke again. The scanner reads biological markers, chemical signatures in the ink compounds, the depth and age of the markings. It calculates based on known patterns across the collective. It says you are a warrior of significant achievement. Ralthos paused, then added something that sounded almost like respect. Perhaps humans mark themselves differently than we do. But the scanner does not read intention. It reads only what is there. Another alien pushed through the crowd, this one covered in dark scales with prominent horns curving back from its skull. It spoke in a harsh, barking language that the translator struggled with. War Chief Brutan of the Horgath, Ralthos said, apparently translating. He says if you are truly a warrior of such status, you should prove it. He questions whether humans are honest about their capabilities. Rebecca looked at David, who had gone even paler. She looked at the crowd of aliens, all watching her with expressions she couldn't quite read. She looked down at her arm again, at the phoenix that had gotten her through her mother's funeral, at the flowers she'd gotten on a whim during a weekend in Seattle, at the words that reminded her where she came from. Somehow, her personal history had just become a galactic incident. I'll prove whatever needs proving, she heard herself say. But I'm telling you the truth. These markings aren't about war. Ralthos nodded slowly. Perhaps. But in the collective, what the scanner reads becomes truth. You have been marked as a warrior. Now you must be one. The alarms had stopped screaming, but Rebecca's heart hadn't gotten the message. It pounded against her ribs as she realized their carefully planned diplomatic mission had just become something else entirely, something she wasn't prepared for. David was saying something urgent about protocol and review, but Ralthos was already turning away, issuing orders in a language that buzzed and clicked. The crowd began to disperse, but not before dozens of alien faces had memorized hers. She could practically see the information spreading through the ship, racing ahead of them through whatever communication systems these people used. The human, with the markings, the warrior who walked through their scanner and made it. Scream. Rebecca touched the phoenix on her arm and wondered what her tattoo artist back home would think about all this. Probably. Should have mentioned this. Possibility in the waiver, she thought grimly, and followed Ralthos deeper into the alien ship. The conference room was too cold, or maybe Rebecca just couldn't stop shivering. She sat at a table that curved in a way human furniture never did, designed for bodies with different joints and different expectations about what sitting meant. Across from her, High Commander Ralthos waited with the patience of stone. David paced behind her, which wasn't helping. Every few seconds he'd mutter something about diplomatic protocols or cultural liaisons, his shoes clicking against the metal floor in an irregular rhythm that made Rebecca want to scream. 3 other aliens had joined them, each from a different species within the collective, each staring at her with unsettling intensity. Walk us through it, Ralthos said finally, each marking what battle it represents. Rebecca closed her eyes briefly. They'd been at this for an hour already. Every explanation she gave seemed to make things worse. The translation devices kept glitching on words like aesthetic and memorial, turning her meanings into something closer to trophy and victory marker. The phoenix, she started again, touching the bird on her forearm. In human mythology, the phoenix is a bird that dies and is reborn from its own ashes. I got this tattoo after my mother passed away. It represents hope, renewal, continuing forward after loss. One of the aliens, a being that looked like it was made of crystalline structures held together by some force Rebecca didn't understand, leaned forward. Its voice chimed like bells. Passed away through combat, it asked. No. Cancer, a disease. The aliens exchanged looks. Ralthos made a notation on a device that projected light into the air, symbols Rebecca couldn't read appearing and rearranging themselves. So you mark yourself to show you survived a death in your family, Ralthos said slowly. This is close to the Vrenathi tradition. They mark themselves for each blood relative lost to war, but they use simple lines, not elaborate images. Your marking is complex, artistic. It must represent something more. Rebecca felt frustration building in her chest. It's complex because I paid an artist to make it beautiful. Because I wanted to look at it and feel something other than grief. That's all. But Ralthos was shaking its head. The scanner reads the chemical composition of the ink. This particular compound contains elements that suggest permanence, commitment, You chose to carry this image forever. In the collective, permanent markings are never trivial. David stopped pacing. Commander, in human culture, many people have permanent markings that are purely decorative. It's common, not reserved for warriors or any special class. How many? Asked the crystalline alien. What? How many humans bear such markings? David hesitated. I don't have exact numbers. Maybe 30% of adults? Some estimates are higher. The room went silent. Rebecca could practically feel the shock rippling through the aliens. Finally, the third visitor spoke. A thick-set creature with 6 limbs and mottled brown skin. Its voice rumbled deep enough that she felt it in her bones. 30% of your species are warriors of marking? No, Rebecca said firmly. 30% just have tattoos. Most of us aren't warriors at all. I served 2 tours, got a few commendations, but I was logistics and coordination. I never saw direct combat. Ralthos tilted its head. But you wear the markings of direct combat. The geometric patterns here, it gestured at her upper arm. These match strategic formation indicators used by the Kelith people. 5 interlocking shapes representing 5 victories through superior positioning. They're just triangles and circles, Rebecca protested. I got them because I liked how they looked with the phoenix. The artist showed me 3 designs and I picked this one. And the flowers? The crystalline being pointed at the delicate cherry blossoms that wound up toward her shoulder. What do these represent? Rebecca took a deep breath. Growth, beauty, the temporary nature of life. Cherry blossoms bloom for only a short time each year where I'm from. They're a reminder to appreciate things while they last. Interesting, Ralthos said. The Quillari use floral patterns to denote worlds they've conquered, but chosen not to destroy. Mercy victories. The number of petals indicates the value of the world spared. That's not what these mean. But it is what they are read as, Ralthos said, not unkindly. You must understand, Captain Walsh. The Draxian Collective has existed for 12,000 of your years. In all that time, across 47 member species, skin markings have meant one thing: achievement in combat, status earned through valor. When our scanner reads your markings, it compares them against this database. It finds matches. It draws conclusions. David sat down next to Rebecca, his earlier agitation fading into something that looked like resignation. So what happens now? We explain that humans are different, that our markings mean different things, and we move forward? The brown-skinned alien made a sound like rocks grinding together. Not possible. News has already spread through 3 sectors. The warrior with extensive honors has arrived. Other species are taking notice. The Horgath especially. Who are the Horgath? Rebecca asked, though she suspected she didn't want to know. A warrior culture, Ralthos explained. They value strength above all else. They compete constantly for status within the collective. When they heard about your markings, they sent a challenge. Rebecca felt her stomach drop. What kind of challenge? A demonstration of capability. In the grand arena, broadcast across all collective worlds. You would face War Chief Brutan, the one you met in the corridor. He believes you are either a fraud or a threat. Either way, he demands proof. I can't fight an alien war chief, Rebecca said, hearing the edge of panic in her own voice. I told you I'm not a frontline warrior. I coordinated supply chains and troop movements. I've never been in hand-to-hand combat with another human, let alone an alien. Then you must refuse the challenge, the crystalline being said simply. Ralthos made a gesture that might have been sympathy. If you refuse, the Horgath will claim you are marked with false honors. This would bring shame not just to you, but to all humanity. The collective would see your species as dishonest, willing to display status you have not earned. It would end any possibility of diplomatic relations. David's face had gone red. That's not fair. We didn't know about your cultural interpretations. We came here in good faith. Faith is not measured in ignorance, the brown alien rumbled. It is measured in action when challenged. Rebecca looked down at her arm again. The phoenix seemed to stare back at her with its eternally burning eyes. She thought about the day she got it, sitting in a tattoo parlor in Portland while rain hammered against the windows. The artist had been a woman named Claire who'd lost her own mother the year before. They'd talked about grief and art and permanence while the needle did its work. Claire had said something that stuck with Rebecca. Tattoos are a promise to your future self that what you're feeling right now matters enough to carry forever. How long do I have? Rebecca asked quietly. 1 week, Ralthos said. The arena is being prepared. Species from across the collective are already making travel arrangements to witness the demonstration. What exactly is a demonstration? Do I have to fight to the death? No, the demonstration has 3 phases: combat capability, strategic thinking, and honor judgment. You must show you are worthy of your markings or admit they are false. David stood up abruptly. I need to contact Earth immediately. This has gone beyond my authority to handle. We need military advisors, legal counsel, cultural experts. You have 6 days, 18 hours, and approximately 43 minutes, Ralthos said, checking its light display device. I suggest you use the time wisely. The meeting ended shortly after that, with Ralthos promising to send detailed information about the demonstration format and Horgath combat styles. Rebecca walked back to the human quarters in a daze, David talking rapidly into his communication device, arranging emergency calls with Earth Command. Inside her assigned room, Rebecca finally let herself sit down on the floor, back against the wall. The room was designed for humans, thank God, with familiar furniture and normal gravity. She pulled off her uniform jacket and looked at her other arm, the right one. No tattoos there, just pale skin and a small scar from when she fell off her bike at age 7. Why had she gotten so many on the left side? No real reason. The artist had recommended building a sleeve gradually, and she just kept going, adding pieces that meant something, that felt right, never imagining that those choices made in tattoo parlors across Earth would end up defining humanity's first impression on a galactic stage. Her communication device buzzed. A message from the other ship crew. Lieutenant Ana Rodriguez wanted to talk. Her message was short. They scanned me too. My back tattoo is apparently worth a fleet command. What the hell is happening? Rebecca started laughing and couldn't stop, even when the laughter turned into something closer to crying. Somewhere on Earth, Claire the tattoo artist was probably working on someone's shoulder piece, completely unaware that her art had just become an interstellar incident. The phoenix on Rebecca's arm seemed to glow under the room's lighting. Dies and is reborn, she thought. Maybe that's what she'd have to do. Die to the person who got tattoos for personal reasons and be reborn as whatever these aliens needed her to be, at least for 1 week. At least until she could figure out how to survive a demonstration against a professional warrior culture, while protecting humanity's reputation, and maybe, just maybe, making it clear that humans were more than what aliens scanned on their skin. Ana Rodriguez threw another punch at the training dummy, and the impact sent vibrations up through her arms that made her teeth rattle. The dummy didn't move. It was designed for beings 3 times human weight, and no matter how hard she hit it, the thing just absorbed the impact like she was throwing cotton balls. This is useless, she said, breathing hard. We're not going to outpunch them. We need a different approach. Rebecca sat on a bench against the wall, watching Ana and the other 2 security officers work through combat drills. They had 5 days left before the demonstration, and despite all their training, Rebecca felt less prepared than when they started. The Draxians had provided them with a practice arena, access to combat footage of Horgath warriors, and detailed biological data. All of it just made the situation look worse. Show me the Brutan footage again, Rebecca said. Lieutenant Peter Grant, their technology specialist, pulled up the holographic display. The image flickered to life in the center of the room, showing War Chief Brutan in a previous demonstration. The Horgath warrior moved like controlled violence, 8 feet of scaled muscle and bone protrusions that could apparently punch through military-grade armor. In the footage, Brutan faced off against a warrior from another species, something with 6 limbs and natural weapons. The fight lasted 11 seconds. Brutan won without taking a single hit. Okay, Ana said, watching the replay. Okay, we can't win with strength. We can't win with armor. We definitely can't win with those. She pointed at the horn-like protrusions on Brutan's head and shoulders. The Horgath have thicker skin than humans, Peter read from his datapad. Higher bone density. Natural weapons. They're built for combat from birth. Their entire culture revolves around strength demonstrations and honor challenges. Rebecca wiped sweat from her forehead. She'd been training non-stop since the meeting with Ralthos, pushing her body harder than she had since military basic training. Her muscles ached in places she'd forgotten existed, but none of it mattered if the demonstration was just about physical strength. What about the strategic thinking portion? She asked. Ralthos said there were 3 phases. Peter scrolled through his notes. Phase 1 is direct combat capability. Phase 2 is described as tactical problem-solving under pressure. Phase 3 is something the translation calls honor choice or moral combat. I'm not entirely clear on what that means. Anna stopped punching the dummy and joined them. Her own tattoos were visible on her arms and back, a full geometric mandala that the scanners had interpreted as fleet command decorations. She'd been laughing about it at first, but the laugh had died when she realized Rebecca might actually have to fight because of all this. We need to watch more footage, Anna said. Not just Horgath victories. Show me demonstrations where the Horgath lost. Peter's fingers danced over his datapad. There aren't many. The Horgath are dominant in physical combat demonstrations, but here's one from about 6 years ago. Bruton faced a Quillari warrior. The hologram shifted. This time Brutan moved with the same aggressive power, but the opponent was different. The Quillari looked fragile, almost ethereal, its crystalline body refracting light in strange patterns. The fight began, and Brutan charged immediately. The Quillari didn't try to block or counter. It moved sideways, letting Brutan's momentum carry him past. Then it did something with light, a flash that made even the recording hard to watch. Bruton stumbled, disoriented. The Quillari didn't press the attack. It just waited, patient as stone. When Brutan charged again, the same thing happened. Dodge, flash, wait. This continued for several minutes until Brutan, frustrated and exhausted, made a mistake. He overextended on a strike and the Quillari simply stepped aside. Brutan fell. The demonstration ended there, not with a knockout or a submission, but with Brutan on the ground and the Quillari standing calmly nearby. That's it, Rebecca said, standing up. That's how we do it. You want to turn into a crystal alien and flash light at him? Anna asked skeptically. No. I want to fight like a human instead of trying to be a Horgath. Rebecca started pacing, her mind racing. Look at what the Quillari did. It didn't try to match Brutan's strength. It used what it had. Speed, light, patience. It made Brutan beat himself. Peter was nodding slowly. Humans are built for endurance, not power. We evolved to chase prey over long distances. We overheat slower than most Earth mammals. We can keep going when other predators would have to stop. Exactly, Rebecca said. Brutan fights like a sprinter. All power, all aggression, quick dominance. What if I fight like a marathon runner? What if I make him chase me? Tire him out, wait for him to make mistakes. Anna looked doubtful. The arena might not be big enough for that. And even if you tire him out, you still have to show combat capability. You can't just run away for the whole demonstration. I won't be running away. I'll be fighting strategically. Rebecca felt something clicking into place in her mind, a plan forming from scattered pieces. The Horgath value direct confrontation. They see retreat as weakness. But humans don't. We used guerrilla tactics for centuries on Earth. We know how to make strategic retreats, how to use terrain, how to turn defense into offense. The third security officer, a quiet man named Robert Chen, spoke up for the first time. You're talking about asymmetric warfare, using your strengths against his weaknesses instead of matching him head-on. Yes, Rebecca said. The Quillari showed it works. We just need to adapt it for human capabilities. Peter pulled up schematic diagrams of the grand arena. The arena changes configuration for each phase. Phase 1 starts in an open space, then obstacles and structures appear for Phase 2. Phase 3 takes place in a neutral environment with specific scenario objectives. Rebecca studied the schematics. The arena was large, about the size of a sports stadium. Multiple levels, changing terrain, environmental controls. It was designed to test different aspects of combat capability. That meant it was designed with the assumption that different species would fight differently. Show me human combat training footage, Rebecca said. Military obstacle courses, urban combat simulations, anything that shows how we actually fight. For the next several hours, they reviewed footage from Earth. Human soldiers moving through buildings, using cover, communicating in teams, adapting to changing situations. The contrast with Horgath footage was stark. Where the Horgath charged and overpowered, humans positioned and outmaneuvered. Where the Horgath valued individual strength, humans worked together. But Rebecca would be alone in that arena. No team, no backup. Just her against a warrior who outweighed her by 100 pounds and had natural weapons she couldn't match. I need to get faster, she said finally. Not stronger, faster. If I can't take hits, I need to not get hit at all. Anna grinned. Now you're thinking like a boxer. Like Muhammad Ali. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Who? Peter asked. Famous human boxer from the 20th century, Anna explained. He beat opponents who were bigger and stronger by being faster and smarter. Made them chase him, tired them out, then struck when they were vulnerable. Rebecca felt a small surge of hope. Maybe this wasn't completely impossible. Maybe there was a way to survive the demonstration without getting crushed by an 8-foot alien warrior. David burst into the training room, his face flushed with excitement or panic. Rebecca couldn't tell which. "We have a problem," he announced. "Another one," Anna muttered. "The news about the demonstration has spread further than we thought. 2 more species have sent warriors to challenge our other crew members. Lieutenant Rodriguez, they want you to demonstrate next week. And Engineer Brady, apparently his tribal armband is being interpreted as siege survival marks." Anna's grin disappeared. "You're joking." "I wish I was," David said. "This is spiraling. If Rebecca wins her demonstration, we're going to have more challenges. If she loses, humanity looks weak. If she admits the truth about the tattoos, humanity looks dishonest. I've been in diplomatic crises before, but this is insane." Rebecca sat back down on the bench, suddenly exhausted. "What does Earth Command say?" "They're sending advisors, but they won't arrive for another week. Too late for your demonstration. They want us to delay, to request more time for diplomatic review." "Will the Horgath accept a delay?" David's expression answered before his words did. "No. Ralthos tried to negotiate on our behalf. The Horgath see any delay as cowardice. If you don't show up in 5 days, they'll consider it a forfeit, and the collective will assume humans falsely claimed warrior status. So I fight," Rebecca said simply. "You could get seriously hurt," Peter said. "The Horgath don't kill in demonstrations, but injuries are common. Broken bones, concussions, worse." Rebecca touched the phoenix on her arm. She thought about her mother, about the cancer that had eaten through her body while she stayed optimistic and strong until the very end. She thought about getting this tattoo as a promise to herself, that she could survive loss and keep moving forward. Maybe that's what the aliens were right about after all. Maybe her tattoos did represent survival, just not the kind they expected. "Then I'll get hurt," she said. "But I'll get hurt fighting the smart way, not the Horgath way. Anna, Peter, Robert, we have 5 days to turn me into the fastest, most annoying opponent Brutan has ever faced. I won't beat him with strength. I'll beat him by being more human than he expects." Anna's grin came back. "Hell yes. Let's teach an alien warrior what humans do when we're outmatched. We improvise, we adapt, we survive." The training intensified after that. Rebecca ran until her legs felt like rubber, practiced evasion drills until dodging became instinct, studied the footage until she could predict Brutan's movements before he made them. She didn't sleep much. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the arena, saw herself facing down an 8-foot wall of muscle and natural weaponry. But somewhere in the exhaustion and fear, she found something else. Determination. Not to prove the aliens right about their interpretation of her tattoos, not even to save humanity's diplomatic mission, though that mattered. She would fight because running away wasn't an option. She would fight because sometimes you ended up in situations you never planned for, and you either dealt with them or you let them break you. She'd survived military service, grief, doubt, and 100 other smaller battles that had shaped who she was. This was just one more, just bigger, stranger, and witnessed by billions of aliens across space. No pressure at all. 2 days before the demonstration, Rebecca discovered she couldn't sleep at all anymore. She lay in her quarters staring at the ceiling, running through strategies and counter-strategies until they all blurred together. When exhaustion finally dragged her under, she dreamed of phoenixes that couldn't rise from their ashes, of fighting opponents made of stone, of failing in front of billions of watching eyes. She gave up on sleep around what Earth time would have called 4 in the morning. The ship operated on a day cycle that didn't quite match human rhythms, but the gym was always open. She found Anna already there, working through a weapons kata with movements that were more dance than combat. "Couldn't sleep either?" Rebecca asked. Anna finished her form before answering. "Keep thinking about next week. After you demonstrate, it's my turn. Then Brady's. How many of us have tattoos? How long before the entire crew is expected to prove themselves against alien warriors?" Rebecca picked up a training staff, testing its weight. The Draxians had provided human-appropriate practice weapons, though she wouldn't be allowed actual weapons in the arena. "Maybe if I do well enough, they'll be satisfied. Maybe this ends with one demonstration." "You don't believe that?" "No," Rebecca admitted. "I don't. They trained in silence for a while, the only sounds their breathing and the impact of practice weapons against padded targets. Rebecca was faster than she'd been a week ago, her reflexes sharper, but she was also more aware of her limitations. Every simulation against the Horgath combat style ended the same way. If Brutan landed a solid hit, she was done. One punch from those massive fists would break ribs, maybe worse. Peter arrived around dawn carrying coffee that smelled like burnt plastic and folders stuffed with printouts. "I've been going through the collective archives all night. Found something interesting." Rebecca gratefully accepted the terrible coffee. Good interesting or bad interesting? Maybe both. The honor choice phase, the third part of the demonstration, I finally found detailed records of what it involves. Peter spread out papers on a bench. It's not just combat. It's a moral test. Both warriors are presented with a scenario that requires a choice between victory and honor. What kind of scenario? Anna asked. It varies. Sometimes it's a simulation of saving non-combatants versus completing an objective. Sometimes it's choosing between destroying an enemy or showing mercy. The specifics change, but the principle is constant. True warriors must know when to fight and when to stop fighting. Rebecca processed this. So even if I survive the first two phases, the third one tests my judgment. Tests whether you deserve the markings you wear, Peter said. According to the records, many warriors fail this phase. They're so focused on winning that they make dishonorable choices. The collective values knowing when to hold back as much as knowing how to attack. That's actually encouraging, Anna said. Rebecca's not a natural fighter. She's a strategist, someone who thinks about consequences. That might actually give her an edge in Phase 3. Rebecca wasn't so sure, but she appreciated the optimism. They spent the next few hours reviewing scenarios from past demonstrations, trying to identify patterns. The moral test seemed designed to reveal character. Warriors who valued only victory over everything else failed. Warriors who understood the larger purpose of combat, who could balance strength with wisdom, those were the ones who succeeded. Ralthos arrived mid-morning with news that made Rebecca's stomach drop. War Chief Brutan has requested a pre-demonstration meeting. It is traditional for warriors to face each other before the arena, to show mutual respect. Do I have to go? Rebecca asked. It is not required, but refusal would be seen as discourteous. The collective appreciates warriors who honor traditions even from unfamiliar cultures. David, who had followed Ralthos in, looked worried. Is this safe? What if Brutan tries to intimidate her? Intimidation is expected, Ralthos said calmly. Understanding your opponent's nature before combat is part of the warrior code. But no physical violence is permitted before the demonstration. That would dishonor both participants. Rebecca made a decision. I'll meet him. Whence to in 1 hour. I will escort you. The hour passed too quickly. Rebecca changed into a formal version of her uniform, making sure her tattoos were visible. If they were going to be misunderstood anyway, she might as well own it. Anna helped her prepare, offering last-minute advice that was probably more for Anna's peace of mind than Rebecca's. Remember, you don't have to prove you're the strongest. You just have to prove you're a survivor. I know. And if he tries to intimidate you, don't back down. But don't escalate either. Stay calm, stay measured. Anna, I've been in the military. I've dealt with intimidation before. Not from an 8-foot alien warrior who could probably bench press a car. Fair point. Ralthos led Rebecca through corridors that grew progressively larger and more ornate. They were heading toward the diplomatic wing, where high-status visitors stayed. Other aliens moved aside as they passed, many of them staring at Rebecca with expressions ranging from curiosity to something that might have been respect. Word had spread about the human warrior. Rebecca wondered what stories they were telling about her, what legends were forming around a simple logistics officer with tattoos. The meeting room was enormous, with a ceiling that stretched up at least 30 feet. In the center of the space stood War Chief Brutan. He looked even more imposing than in the footage. Dark scales covered his body, reflecting light like polished armor. The bone protrusions on his shoulders and head weren't just defensive, they were weapons, sharp and clearly strong. His eyes were yellow with vertical pupils, and they tracked Rebecca's movement with predatory focus. Captain Walsh, he said, his voice translated into English through her earpiece. The human warrior marked with many honors. Rebecca stepped forward, refusing to show fear. War Chief Brutan, thank you for agreeing to meet before the demonstration. Brutan tilted his head, studying her. You are smaller than I expected. More fragile looking. Yet your markings suggest great victories. Explain this contradiction. Humans come in different sizes, Rebecca said carefully. Our strength isn't always physical. All strength is physical, Brutan said, sounding confused by the concept. Power is measured in what you can break, what you can withstand, what you can dominate. Your species confuses me. You mark yourselves as great warriors, but you look like prey animals. Rebecca felt anger flicker in her chest, but pushed it down. Maybe we define warrior differently than you do. Brutan moved closer, each step deliberate. Rebecca held her ground even though every instinct screamed at her to back away. He loomed over her, close enough that she could smell something like heated metal and dry earth. I have fought in 247 demonstrations, Brutan said quietly. I have never lost. I have defeated opponents from 16 different species. Some were larger than me. Some were faster. Some had weapons I could not match. But all of them understood that combat is about dominance, about proving superiority. Do you understand this? I understand that you believe that, Rebecca said. Brutan made a sound that might have been laughter or a growl. You are brave to speak so. That is good. Cowards do not deserve the honor of the arena. Tell me, human, what is the greatest victory you have won? Rebecca thought about lying, about making up some battle that would match his expectations. But something in Brutan's gaze suggested he would know, and more importantly, she was tired of pretending to be something she wasn't. My greatest victory was getting out of bed every day for 6 months after my mother died, she said quietly. It was continuing to function when everything inside me wanted to stop. It was choosing to keep living when living felt impossible. The room went silent. Brutan stared at her with an expression she couldn't read. Finally, he spoke. That is not combat. No, Rebecca agreed. But it's survival. And sometimes survival is harder than fighting. Brutan stepped back, his movements suggesting consideration. The Horgath honor strength in battle. We mark ourselves only with victories against enemies. You speak of victories against yourself. This is strange. Humans are strange, Rebecca said. We're good at that. Something shifted in Brutan's posture. Not respect exactly, but maybe curiosity. In 2 days, we will face each other in the arena. I will test your combat capability, your strategic thinking, your honor. If you prove worthy, I will acknowledge it. If you prove false, I will expose it. This is the Horgath way. Fair enough, Rebecca said. Brutan turned to leave, then paused. Your markings, the firebird on your arm. In Horgath culture, we have stories of creatures that cannot die, that rise from defeat stronger than before. We consider them worthy opponents. Perhaps your marking is not false, human. Perhaps it simply means something different than we assumed. He left before Rebecca could respond. She stood in the massive room, Ralthos waiting patiently by the door, and tried to process what had just happened. Had Brutan just admitted that human and Horgath cultures might value different things? Or was he simply sizing her up before the demonstration? That went better than expected, Ralthos said. Brutan showed you respect by meeting with you. Many opponents do not receive this courtesy. He still plans to demonstrate that I'm either a real warrior or a fraud, Rebecca pointed out. Yes. But he is willing to consider that you might be a real warrior by human standards, even if those standards differ from Horgath ones. This is progress. Rebecca wasn't sure if it was progress or just postponing the inevitable, but she accepted the small victory. 2 days left. 2 days to prepare for the most important fight of her life, against an opponent who had won 247 demonstrations. The phoenix on her arm seemed heavier somehow, as if it understood the weight of what was coming. Dies and is reborn, she thought. Time to see if that worked for humans too, or if it was just a nice story she'd been telling herself. Back in the training room, Anna and Peter were waiting with new strategies and revised plans. Robert had created a 3-dimensional model of the arena, with predicted obstacle configurations. They had 48 hours to prepare for 3 phases of demonstration against a warrior who had never lost. Rebecca rolled her shoulders, pushed aside the fear, and got to work. Fear could wait. Right now she needed to be faster, smarter, and more determined than she'd ever been. She'd survived grief. She'd survived military service. She'd survived a week of alien misunderstandings. 2 more days. 1 demonstration. Then maybe, finally, she could explain to the galaxy that humans marked themselves not to show what they'd conquered, but to remember what had shaped them. One way or another, the truth was coming to the arena. The grand arena hung in space like a crystal sphere, reflecting starlight from a dozen different systems. Rebecca watched it grow larger through the transport shuttle's viewport, her stomach doing gymnastics that had nothing to do with zero gravity. Somewhere inside that structure, billions of beings across the collective were already tuning in to watch a human prove herself or fail spectacularly. Anna sat beside her, quiet for once. David was reviewing his notes obsessively, though there was nothing left to review. Peter and Robert had stayed behind to monitor from the command center, ready to provide any technical support if the rules allowed. Which they probably wouldn't. You ready? Anna asked softly. Rebecca touched the phoenix on her arm. No, but I'm going anyway. The shuttle docked with a section of the arena designated for participants. Ralthos waited for them at the airlock, along with several other officials Rebecca didn't recognize. They all wore elaborate ceremonial coverings that suggested this was being taken very seriously. Captain Walsh, Ralthos greeted her. The demonstration will begin in 1 hour. You will be given time to prepare in the Warriors' Chamber. Ambassador Park and Lieutenant Rodriguez may accompany you until the final preparation period. They followed Ralthos through corridors filled with aliens of species Rebecca had never seen before. Some stopped to stare at her. Others made gestures she couldn't interpret. The weight of expectation pressed down from all sides, making it hard to breathe. The Warriors' Chamber was surprisingly simple. A place to meditate, to focus, to prepare mentally for what came next. Rebecca had expected something more elaborate given the arena's ornate exterior. But maybe warriors needed simplicity before complexity. I will return in 45 minutes, Ralthos said, and left them alone. Rebecca sat on a bench that adjusted to human proportions. David paced. Anna stood by the door, arms crossed, radiating protective tension. You don't have to do this, David said suddenly. We could still claim diplomatic immunity, request arbitration, delay until Earth sends support. We've been over this, Rebecca said. Delay means failure. Failure means humanity looks weak or dishonest. And then the collective refuses diplomatic relations. We lose potential allies, and humans become that species that talks big but can't back it up. It's not fair that you're carrying this burden alone. Life isn't fair, Anna said. But Rebecca isn't alone. She's representing all of us, yeah, but we got her ready. We gave her every tool we could. Now she uses them. Rebecca appreciated Anna's confidence even if she didn't entirely share it. The past week had been the most intense training of her life. But Brutan had a lifetime of combat experience. She had speed and strategy. He had power and practice. The math didn't look good, but the math never looked good when humans faced impossible odds and somehow humans kept surviving anyway. A chime sounded. Ralthos's voice came through a speaker. Captain Walsh, it is time for final preparation. Your companions must leave now. Anna pulled Rebecca into a quick, fierce hug. Fight smart, not hard. Make him chase you. Tire him out. Then strike when he's vulnerable. David shook her hand formally. Whatever happens, you've already done something remarkable. You've made the collective see humans as more than just another species requesting entry. Win or lose, that matters. Then they were gone. And Rebecca was alone with her thoughts and her tattoos and the knowledge that in minutes she would walk into an arena, watched by billions. She closed her eyes and thought about her mother. About sitting by her hospital bed during those final weeks, watching cancer consume someone who had always seemed invincible. Her mother had fought death with humor, and Grace had looked at Rebecca one afternoon and said something that stuck. Bravery isn't about not being afraid. It's about being terrified and doing the thing anyway because it matters. The door opened. A different alien appeared, smaller than Ralthos, with smooth gray skin and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on its face. I am Qualix, Arena Coordinator. I will explain the demonstration format. Please listen carefully as translations can be imperfect. Rebecca stood, forcing her muscles to relax. Tension would slow her down. Phase 1 test combat capability, Qualix said. You and War Chief Brutan will face each other in an open arena. No weapons, no assistance. You must demonstrate skill, technique, and the will to engage. This phase continues until both warriors have shown their capability, or one warrior yields. How long does it usually last? Rebecca asked. Between 3 and 20 minutes, depending on the warriors involved. Phase 2 begins immediately after. The arena will reconfigure into a complex environment with obstacles, levels, and tactical challenges. You must navigate this environment while continuing to engage your opponent. This tests strategic thinking and adaptability. Rebecca nodded, remembering the simulations Peter had built. Phase 3 is different, Qualix continued. Both warriors will face a scenario that requires judgment. You must choose how to act. There is no single correct answer, but your choice will reveal your understanding of honor. The collective values warriors who know not just how to fight, but why to fight. What kind of scenario? It varies. You will understand when it happens. Are you prepared? No, Rebecca thought. But she said yes. Qualix led her through another corridor to a staging area. Through a transparent barrier, she could see the arena floor. It was massive, easily 500 feet across, with a surface that looked like polished stone. Lighting came from somewhere overhead, bright enough to see clearly but not harsh. In the center of the arena stood Brutan, waiting. You will enter from the opposite side, Qualix said. When both warriors are in position, the demonstration begins. May you fight with honor. The walk to her entrance point felt like miles, even though it probably wasn't more than a few hundred feet. Rebecca could hear sound now, a low rumble that might have been crowd noise from billions of spectators across space, watching through whatever technology the collective used. She stepped onto the arena floor. The stone felt solid under her boots, slightly warm, textured enough to provide traction. Good. She'd need to move fast, and slipping would be fatal. Brutan watched her cross to her starting position. In the arena lighting, his scales seemed to glow with dark fire. Every muscle was clearly defined under that natural armor. He looked like violence given form, like something evolution had designed specifically to dominate combat. Rebecca looked down at her own arms, at the tattoos that had caused all this confusion. The phoenix, the flowers, the geometric patterns, the poem. None of it had anything to do with war. All of it had everything to do with surviving life as a human. Maybe that would be enough. A voice boomed across the arena, speaking a language Rebecca's translator rendered as formal and ancient. She caught words like honor, demonstration, warrior, tradition. Then the voice switched to English. Human Captain Rebecca Walsh, you have been marked with extensive combat honors according to collective recognition. War Chief Brutan of the Horgath challenges you to demonstrate the worthiness of these markings. Do you accept this demonstration? Rebecca's voice came out stronger than she expected. I accept. War Chief Brutan, do you enter this demonstration with honor and recognition of your opponent? I do. Brutan's voice rumbled across the space. Then let the demonstration of combat capability begin. Nothing happened for a moment. Brutan didn't move. Rebecca didn't move. They stood 50 feet apart, measuring each other, waiting for the other to make the first move. Then Brutan charged. He moved faster than Rebecca expected, covering the distance in seconds. She dodged right, using the speed Anna had drilled into her. Brutan's strike whistled past her head, close enough that she felt the air displacement. She rolled away, came up running, putting distance between them. Brutan turned and charged again. This was the pattern. Brutan attacked with overwhelming force. Rebecca evaded, using her smaller size and superior agility. She couldn't match his power, so she didn't try. She made him chase her, made him work for every strike. Minutes passed. Brutan began to show frustration, his strikes becoming wider, less controlled. Rebecca's lungs burned from constant movement, but she kept going. Endurance. Humans were built for endurance. She saw her opening when Brutan overextended on a particularly aggressive strike. She stepped inside his reach and struck at his midsection, not with full force, just enough to show she could. Then she was gone again before he could counter. The crowd sound changed, a ripple of something that might have been surprise. Brutan paused, breathing heavy. You fight like prey. Running, dodging. Where is your warrior spirit? Rebecca, also breathing hard, managed to speak between gasps. I fight like a human. We're good at surviving things that should kill us. Then survive this. Brutan changed tactics. Instead of charging, he advanced methodically, cutting off her escape routes. Rebecca adapted, using the arena space differently, never staying still long enough to be cornered. She struck when she could, quick hits that didn't do much damage but showed capability. This was Phase 1, demonstrating combat capability. She didn't have to win. She just had to prove she could fight. Time became elastic, stretching and compressing. Rebecca lost track of how long they'd been at it. Her muscles screamed. Her lungs felt raw. But she kept moving, kept fighting, kept surviving. Finally, the voice boomed again. Phase 1 complete. Both warriors have demonstrated combat capability. Phase 2 begins now. The arena floor shuddered. Structures rose from beneath, creating levels and obstacles. Walls appeared, platforms emerged at different heights. The simple arena became a complex three-dimensional environment. Rebecca grinned despite her exhaustion. This was where human advantages really showed. Humans were excellent climbers, problem solvers, three-dimensional thinkers. Brutan's power meant less when the environment was complicated. She climbed to a higher platform before Brutan could react. He followed, but his bulk made climbing slower. She moved across the obstacle course like it was a playground, using handholds and jumps that came naturally to primate-descended humans. The chase continued, but now it was different. Now Rebecca was using the environment against him. She led him through narrow passages where his size was a disadvantage. She climbed to places where his weight made following difficult. She turned the arena into her weapon. Brutan adapted too, finding ways to use his strength to bypass obstacles. He smashed through barriers she climbed over. He jumped distances she had to carefully navigate. They were both learning, both adjusting strategies on the fly. And then Phase 3 began. The arena changed one final time. The obstacles disappeared, retracting into the floor. The space became simple again, but something was different. In the center of the arena, a holographic projection appeared, showing what looked like a simulation of a space station under attack. The voice boomed across the space. Phase 3, the honor choice. Both warriors will face a scenario that tests judgment, mercy, and understanding of true combat purpose. You may choose to continue fighting each other, or you may choose to address the scenario. Your choices will be observed. Rebecca watched the hologram. The space station was clearly damaged, sections venting atmosphere. Small figures, presumably representing civilians, were trapped in various sections. The attacking force appeared to be automated defense systems gone rogue, continuing to fire on everything indiscriminately. Brutan moved closer to the hologram, studying it with the same intensity he'd shown during combat. Rebecca joined him, keeping enough distance to react if he attacked. But Brutan seemed focused on the scenario rather than on her. "This is the test," he said quietly. "We can continue our demonstration, proving dominance over each other, or we can address the scenario, attempting to save the simulated lives." "What do you normally do?" Rebecca asked. "The Horgath way is to continue fighting until dominance is established. The scenario is a distraction from true combat." Brutan paused. "But many warriors who make this choice are judged to have failed the honor test. The collective values protecting the weak as much as defeating the strong." Rebecca studied the hologram. The automated systems were targeting evacuation pods, preventing civilians from escaping. Someone would need to shut down those systems while someone else organized evacuation. It was a two-person problem presented to two warriors who had just spent the last hour trying to demonstrate superiority over each other. "What if we work together?" Rebecca said. Brutan's head snapped toward her. "Explain." "The scenario needs two responses. Shut down the weapons and evacuate the civilians. You're stronger, better at direct assault. You could probably smash through to the weapons control systems. I'm faster, better at coordination. I could organize evacuation routes. You suggest cooperation instead of combat? I suggest that maybe the real test is recognizing when fighting each other isn't the point anymore." Brutan was silent for a long moment. Rebecca could see him processing this, weighing it against his culture's values and his own experience. Finally, he spoke. "I have participated in 63 honor choice scenarios. 58 times I continued fighting. 5 times I attempted to address the scenario alone, believing that individual strength was what honor required. I was judged successful in those 5 attempts, but always with reservations from the observers." He looked at Rebecca with his yellow eyes. "Never have I cooperated with an opponent. This is not the Horgath way." "Maybe that's why you've never fully satisfied the honor choice," Rebecca said. "Maybe real honor isn't about doing everything alone. Maybe it's about knowing when to work together." The crowd sound had changed again. Rebecca could feel the weight of billions watching, waiting to see what these two warriors would choose. Continue demonstrating dominance? Attempt the scenario individually? Or do something unprecedented? Brutan made a decision. "Show me your plan, human." They approached the hologram together. Rebecca pointed out the weapons control systems, heavily defended by automated turrets. "You'll need to punch through these defenses." "Can you do that?" "Easily." Then while you're doing that, I'll coordinate evacuation. These pods here, and here need launch sequences initiated. Then we need to guide them away from the weapons fire to safe zones. You will be vulnerable while coordinating, Brutan observed. If I wanted to prove dominance, I could attack while you are distracted. Yes, Rebecca agreed. Trust works both ways. Brutan showed his teeth in what might have been respect or a smile. You are strange, human, but perhaps that is your strength. Very well, let us show the collective what cooperation looks like. They moved into the scenario together. The hologram became interactive, responding to their actions. Brutan charged the weapon systems with the same overwhelming force he'd used against Rebecca, but now directed at automated defenses. His strength, which had seemed almost excessive in personal combat, was perfect for smashing through armored barriers and destroying turrets. Rebecca worked the evacuation, her fingers flying across holographic controls that appeared as she needed them. She prioritized the most vulnerable sections first, routing evacuation pods away from weapons fire. When Brutan cleared a path, she sent pods through it. When he struggled with a particularly defended position, she rerouted power to weaken the defenses from the inside. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. They fell into a rhythm, each playing to their strengths, covering for each other's weaknesses. Rebecca realized this was what good team coordination felt like, something she'd experienced in military logistics but never in combat demonstration. The scenario played out over several minutes. Civilians evacuated, weapons systems shut down, the space station stabilized, the hologram faded, leaving Rebecca and Brutan standing in the center of the arena, breathing hard but not from fighting each other. The silence stretched. The crowd sound had gone completely quiet. Rebecca wondered if they'd made a terrible mistake, if cooperation had been the wrong choice, if she'd just failed not only herself but all of humanity. Then High Commander Ralthos appeared on a platform above the arena floor. When Ralthos spoke, the voice carried across the entire space. In 12,000 years of Draxian collective history, the honor choice has been presented to warriors 8,043 times. Of those, only 17 times have warriors chosen cooperation over continued combat. Of those 17 times, only 4 were judged to be successful demonstrations of true honor. Rebecca's heart sank. They'd failed. Today, Ralthos continued, we witnessed the 5th. The crowd sound exploded, not with jeers or disappointment, but with something that might have been celebration or approval. Rebecca looked at Brutan, who seemed as surprised as she was. Ralthos descended to the arena floor, joined by the other collective officials. War Chief Brutan, you have demonstrated the strength expected of the Horgath. But you have also demonstrated wisdom in recognizing when strength serves a greater purpose than dominance. Captain Walsh, you have demonstrated capabilities unexpected from your species. Speed, strategy, endurance, and the judgment to see cooperation where others see only conflict. Another official stepped forward, the crystalline being that had been at the first meeting. Its voice chimed like music. The question was never whether Captain Walsh's markings represented combat honors by our definition. The question was whether she carried honor at all. Today she answered that question. Brutan spoke up. She fights like no warrior I have faced. She survives through intelligence and adaptation rather than force. This is not the Horgath way, but I acknowledge it as valid. She has earned respect. Rebecca felt something unlock in her chest. Tension she'd been carrying for a week finally releasing. Thank you, War Chief. You could have chosen to continue fighting to prove dominance. Instead, you chose to listen to a different approach. That took courage. Perhaps, Brutan said, or perhaps I recognize that always doing what I have always done leads only to what I have always achieved. You showed me something new. That has value. Ralthos gestured for silence. Captain Walsh, there is still the question of your markings. You have demonstrated honor and capability, but the collective must know the truth. Do these markings represent combat victories in human culture or not? Here it was. The moment of truth. Rebecca could maintain the fiction. Let the collective believe humans marked themselves for battle. It would make humanity seem more aligned with warrior cultures across the galaxy. It might even help diplomatic relations, but it would be a lie. No, Rebecca said clearly. In human culture, we mark ourselves for many reasons. Some of us do commemorate battles or military service, but most of us mark ourselves to remember personal experiences, to carry art on our skin, to express beliefs or feelings. My markings have nothing to do with war. She pointed to the phoenix. This represents my mother's death and my survival of grief. The flowers represent growth and change and beauty. The geometric patterns I got because I liked how they looked. The words on my shoulder are from a poem my grandmother used to recite. They remind me where I came from. The arena was completely silent now. I'm not a legendary warrior, Rebecca continued. I served in the military, yes, but in logistics and coordination. I helped move supplies and people. I earned some commendations for efficiency, not valor. When your scanner read my markings, it interpreted them through the only cultural framework it had, but it was wrong about what they meant. I'm sorry if that disappoints you. Ralthos looked at the other officials. A long moment passed where they seemed to communicate without speaking. Finally, Ralthos turned back to Rebecca. You say your markings represent survival of personal loss, overcoming internal struggles, carrying memory and meaning. Is this correct? Yes. Then perhaps the scanner was not wrong, the crystalline being said. Perhaps it simply recognized a different kind of combat. The battles humans fight within themselves. Brutan made a thoughtful sound. Among the Horgath, we mark ourselves only for external victories. We do not acknowledge internal struggles as worthy of commemoration. But I watched you fight today. Your endurance, your refusal to quit even when outmatched, your choice to cooperate instead of continuing from pride alone. These required internal strength. Perhaps human markings recognize this strength that my people ignore. Ralthos addressed the billions watching. The Draxian Collective has encountered 47 species. Each has taught us something about honor, combat, and the nature of strength. Today, humanity teaches us that battles are not always fought with fists or weapons. Sometimes they are fought with determination to continue living, with the choice to carry painful memories rather than forget them, with the courage to admit truth even when lies would be easier. The commander turned back to Rebecca. Captain Walsh, your markings do not represent combat victories by our original understanding, but they represent survival, which is perhaps a greater victory. You are not a warrior by Horgath standards, but you are a warrior by human standards, which we now recognize as equally valid. Anna's voice suddenly crackled through Rebecca's earpiece. You did it. You actually did it. You just redefined warrior for an entire galactic collective. Rebecca felt tears trying to form and blinked them back. Not here, not now. She could fall apart later. Right now, she needed to finish this. Thank you for understanding, she said. And thank you for letting me demonstrate that humans survive through adaptation and cooperation, not just force. We're not the strongest species. We're probably not the fastest or the smartest either, but we're really good at enduring things that should break us and finding ways to work together when we need to. This is noted, Ralthos said. Formal diplomatic relations between humanity and the Draxian Collective will proceed. Your species will be recognized not as great warriors but as great survivors. This distinction carries honor in its own right. Brutan approached Rebecca, extending one massive clawed hand. She took it and he gripped her arm in what she guessed was a Horgath gesture of respect. If you face challenges again, human Rebecca, I would be honored to stand with you rather than against you. Same here, War Chief. The demonstration ended officially after that. Officials led Rebecca back through corridors while aliens stopped to watch her pass, many making gestures she now understood as respect. Anna and David met her in the warrior's chamber, both talking over each other about how incredible it was, how the broadcast was being watched by every species in the collective, how humanity's reputation had just been established as something unique. Rebecca barely heard them. She was too tired, too wrung out, too overwhelmed by everything that had just happened. She'd walked into that arena expecting to fail. Instead, she'd somehow convinced a warrior culture to reconsider what strength meant. Later, back on the human ship, Peter showed her the communication feeds. Messages pouring in from Earth, news agencies requesting interviews, military analysts discussing the implications, politicians arguing about what this meant for humanity's future in space, and messages from other tattooed crew members. Anna's challenge had been quietly withdrawn. So had Brady's. Apparently showing that human markings meant something different but equally valid had satisfied the collective's curiosity. Rebecca sat in her quarters, finally alone, and looked at her arm. The phoenix stared back at her with eternal fire in its eyes. Tomorrow she'd probably add to her collection. A small symbol, maybe something that represented this whole crazy week. A reminder that sometimes you survived things you never imagined facing. Her communication device buzzed. A message from someone named Claire with a Portland area code. The tattoo artist who'd done her Phoenix work. Saw the broadcast. Can't believe my artwork just went galactic. Call me when you're back on Earth. First new tattoo is on the house. You've earned it. Rebecca smiled, really smiled, for the first time in days. Yeah. She definitely earned it. The galaxy had learned that humans marked themselves to remember their battles, not just with enemies, but with life itself. That humans survived through cooperation and adaptation. That human strength wasn't about dominating others, but about refusing to quit, even when quitting would be easier. Not a bad first impression after all.